easy. It'll break a man's faith. It's enough to make him wonder if he's ever been sane. When he's bleating for comfort from thy staff and thy rod, and the heaven's only answer is the silence of God. It'll shake a man's timbers when he loses his heart, when he has to remember what broke him apart. This yoke may be easy, but this burden is not, when the crying fields are frozen by the silence of God. But when you have to listen to the voices of the mob, who are reeling in the throes of all the happiness they've got, when they tell you all their troubles have been nailed up to that cross, well, what about the times when even followers get lost? 'Cause we all get lost sometimes. There's a statue of Jesus on a monastery knoll in the hills of Kentucky, all quiet and cold. He's kneeling in the garden, as silent as a stone. His friends are sleeping, and he's weeping all alone. And the man of all sorrows, he never forgot what sorrow is carried by the hearts that he bought. So when the questions dissolve into the silence of God, the aching may remain, but the breaking does not. The aching may remain, but the breaking does not. And the holy lonesome echo of the silence of God.
As you listen to Andrew Peterson's song, The Silence of God, those sentiments at different times can resonate for all of us, can't they? It's about those strange and awful times when we are confronted by the silence of God. You know, in Psalm 42, the psalmist is crying out in such a time. He says, "As the deer longs for flowing streams, so my soul longs after you, O God." The silence of God in our forlorn and confused era, as with many eras of history, is palpable. The longing words of Psalm 42 are words that could be cried out as much by any agnostic as by any man or woman of faith. The psalmist goes, "Where is my God?" And he says, "When shall I come and behold the face of God?" And he says, "My soul thirsts for God, the living God." These are words of confusion and lament, words that many of us as people of faith can be reticent to articulate because we are scared that others might judge us or think we are somehow inadequate in our walk with God. In the storms of life, there are people, many people, who cry out to God all the time. There's the cry of those born in poverty who die as yet another statistic, a roll call far too great for our hearts to bear. There's the cry of those without work whose dignity is lost, whose lives so often spiral into despair. There's the cry of those in constant pain as age or infirmity eats away at their lives. The cry of those who suffer from a terminal illness as they long for a miracle. It's the cry of our own life as we look for a glimpse of the divine in the sorrows and the doubts and the disappointments of life. I wonder sometimes whether those who sit in the mysterious silence of our God are in some ways specially blessed if they maintain any faith at all. Jesus said to Thomas, "Blessed are those who believe without seeing," and he could have added, "and without hearing." For it is not simply the silence of God that confronts us. There's also alongside that, often at the same time, the loud doubt and scorn of the outside world that surrounds us as well. The psalmist goes on to say in Psalm 42, "My tears have been my food day and night, while people," that means others, "continually say to me, 'Where is your God?'" We live in a 24/7 world where less and less people are involved in a church community or call themselves people of faith, and where the church is often subject to judgment and ridicule. Social media voices endlessly fill the silence with a shrill torrent of words. There's opinions and accusations and falsehoods and fantasies, cabals and fear and rage and prophecies of doom, and on and on and on. And the psalmist, in the midst of the silence, proclaims, "By day the Lord commands his steadfast love, and at night his song is with me, a prayer to the God of my life." The silence of God that we experience is the silence that Jesus experienced in his sense of abandonment on Good Friday. It's the silence we experience similar to the silence of Easter Saturday when Jesus descended to the dead. The silence we experience is also the sheer quiet in the empty tomb in which Jesus has risen on Easter Sunday. God is never absent from silence, and if God is silent, it never means that God is absent, and maybe it even means that God is listening deeply to our lives and our voices. Let us find hope and heart in the silence of God, hope that we are not alone. Well, good morning and welcome everyone to Diamo Online. We've recently concluded the 8-week prayer course, part 1, and yes, God does answer prayer, and yes, God does speak, and yes, we can understand his will, but there will be these difficult seasons where it seems like God is on mute, as Pete Gregg puts it, and we really are wondering, how am I going to get through this? And so we've been doing the prayer course part 2, and this course addresses the painful questions of what it means to suffer and to pray and to struggle through the silences, because our prayers seem to be going unanswered. This silence of God thing is the hardest thing. It's the times when the world collapses around us and all goes quiet. Words can't explain, they don't fit, they don't work. And so we turn and we pray. We need God more than ever before, but somehow even God himself seems to be on mute. So this course looks at the hard side of prayer and how to respond when it seems there's no answers, and how to cope with those who try and interpret our experiences for us. These 5 sessions go deeper, and hopefully they will provoke honest reflection and conversation around these really personal questions we all at times ask about prayer. And in a world that seems to have turned upside down these last 2 years, and where there are many COVID fatigued and confused people, I think exploring these questions, thinking about what they mean for us and how we respond, is as important as ever before. Well, the 3rd session last week was called "Why Aren't My Prayers Working?" And the 4th session this week is called "Where is God When Heaven is Silent?" But we'll come to that later in the service. Psalm 32 verse 7 says this, "You are my hiding place. You will protect me from trouble and surround me with songs of deliverance." And you can picture David, the shepherd boy, recalling when he was out in the desert, maybe at night, and there's a hungry bear or a hungry lion comes roaring past looking for a meal, and David would have scrambled into a small cave or under a giant rock and waited out till the lion went off. It's a place where he would have been safe. And he would have remembered that, and he would have thought, aha, God is my hiding place. When the lions and the bears of life strike, there's a place I can go and I can hide and I can wait it out. When Michael Ledner composed the song "You Are My Hiding Place," At the age of 27, a few years ago now, he was going through a really difficult period in his life. His family was coming apart. It was just so challenging and he did not know which way to turn. And he wrote these words, "You are my hiding place. You always fill my heart with songs of deliverance. Whenever I'm afraid, I will trust in you."
You are my hiding place. You always fill my heart with songs of deliverance. Whenever I am afraid, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. Let the weak say I am strong in the strength of the Lord.
You are my hiding place. You always fill my heart with songs of deliverance. Whenever I am afraid, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. Let the weak say I am strong in the strength of the Lord. I will trust in
You are my hiding place. You always fill my heart with songs of deliverance. Whenever I am afraid, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. Let the weak say I am strong in the strength of the Lord.
I will trust in you.
You are my
I will
hiding
trust
place.
in you.
You always fill
Let the
my
weak
heart
say I
of
am strong
deliverance.
in the strength
Whenever I am afraid, I will trust in you.
Hey kids, we've been talking about how sometimes we wonder if God is really listening to us and if he's ever going to come and help us. You ever call out to your mum and dad at night when you're in bed and you're a bit scared and you call out, "Mum, Dad," and they seem to take forever to come to you? Sometimes it's really hard to wait. Daniel used to pray every day and he was used to God talking to him and God responding to him straight away. And one day he got into big trouble with some of the bad guys and they threw him into a den full of hungry lions. And he was there all night. What was God up to? God might have been silent, but he'd not forgotten about Daniel. Take a look.
Daniel lived in exile in the kingdom of Persia. He was very wise and prayed to God 3 times a day. His wisdom meant that he was given lots of responsibility by the king. This made some of the king's other workers very angry, so they decided to trick the king into making a rule that said it was illegal for anyone to pray to a god apart from the king. Those people who wanted to trick the king found Daniel praying one day, and they knew they had him. They rushed back to the king to tell them the news that Daniel had broken the law. When they got to the king, they said, "You need to arrest Daniel because he has broken your law." The king was upset because he loved Daniel and didn't want to have to punish him, because the punishment was being thrown into a den of lions. The king said to Daniel, "May your God save you." The lions were vicious and hungry. Daniel did the one thing he knew he could do. He prayed, and God closed the mouths of the lions, so they did not eat him. That night, the king couldn't sleep at all and rushed early in the morning to find if Daniel was alive. He ordered the guard to open up the lion's den and shouted down inside, "Daniel, are you alive?" Daniel replied, "I'm alive, God has saved me." So they lowered a rope and pulled him up out of the lion's den. The king was amazed that Daniel was safe and that God had saved him. He ordered everyone to worship Daniel's God from then on. And the people who tried to trick Daniel got thrown in the lion's den.
Well, we're going to come to a time of prayer. And so again, just close your eyes if you want for a moment and picture in your mind's eye what you want to bring before the Lord today. It's almost spring. The flowers are beginning to grow. So what's on your plate at the moment? What are you looking forward to? What are you concerned about? What are you grateful for as you look back on this week? What are you saying thank you for? Name these things in your heart. Think about your neighborhood friends. Think about your church community. Remember those who might be unwell or struggling with this whole COVID season. Picture them in your mind's eye and name them before God. I wonder, what are the "how am I going to get through this" questions in your heart at the moment? What are the "why is God on silent about this" questions in your heart? We're going to pray. I want to do it a bit differently today. We're going to listen to Psalm 22 read as a prayer. And as it is read out, use it as your prayer and lift your heart before God.
Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer. By night, but I find no rest. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart has turned to wax. It has melted within me. My strength has dried up like sun-baked clay, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You have laid me in the dust of death. Dogs surround me. A pack of evildoers encircles me. They pierce my hands and my feet. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment. But you, Lord, do not be far from me. You are my strength. Come quickly to help me. I will proclaim your name to my brothers and sisters. I will praise you among your assembled people. For God has not ignored or belittled the suffering of the needy. God has not turned his back on them, but has listened to their cries for help. All the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord. All the families of the nations will bow down before him. Future generations will hear about the wonders of the Lord. They will proclaim God's righteousness, declaring to the people yet unborn, God has done it.
Well, we're working our way through the 5 weeks of the prayer course part 2, presented by Pete Gregg. You can check out the website yourself on the link on the screen. The teaching video plus summary and discussion questions and things are available to connect groups or individuals to use. You can find links to those in the Diamo e-news each week, and we'll try and put them on our Facebook page as well. And they should be on our church website as well. And if we're meeting face-to-face, there'll also be some copies of the study guide available for you in the foyer. So sit back, listen carefully, and enjoy session 4, Where is God When Heaven is Silent?
Hello and welcome to session 4 of the prayer course part 2, Unanswered Prayer. Last time we explored Good Friday and the big why questions we ask when our prayers don't work. Today we arrive at Holy Saturday, the day between Christ's death and resurrection, and ask the where question. Where on earth are you, God, when heaven is silent and your son lies dead in the grave? And as usual, I'm joined by Pete Gregg, who's the author of God on Mute, the book that accompanies this course. Hello again, Pete.
Hi, Gemma. I've been looking forward to this conversation, actually, because Holy Saturday just completely fascinates me. And yet normally we hardly really discuss it. And I think this really, though, is precisely where many of us live most of our lives, somewhere between the cross and the resurrection, between dear God and amen. So it's like we can't deny what Jesus has done for us yesterday on the cross. We may well have high hopes for what he might do tomorrow, but here we are today in a kind of a limbo, just waiting for breakthrough, struggling with unanswered questions, wondering why God's sometimes silent. So that's Holy Saturday.
Sounds like an interesting conversation. So, Pete, why do you think that we do this leapfrog then from Good Friday to Easter Sunday?
Well, it's partly just that the Bible doesn't give us much information about Holy Saturday. But I think it's also that we tend to want everything explained and resolved and tidy in life. We don't handle ambiguity particularly well, I don't think.
Which is weird, though, because as I think you pointed out in our very first session, the Bible is full of questions and struggles.
Right, yeah. One of the most shattering depictions, actually, that I know of Holy Saturday comes in this book here, Elie Wiesel's Night. And it's a personal account of life and death in Auschwitz at the height of the Nazi Holocaust between 1944 and 1945. And then there's a particular day described in the book when they are forced to watch as 3 people are hanged, 2 men and a boy. And watching this, someone behind Elie Wiesel cries out, "Where is God?" So the question we're thinking about today, where is he? The boy takes longer to die than the men because he's so much lighter than the other 2. And so I just want to read you this first-hand account of this harrowing moment, if that's all right. For more than half an hour he stayed there, struggling between life and death, dying in slow agony under our eyes. And we had to look him full in the face. He was still alive as I passed in front of him. His tongue was still red, his eyes were not yet glazed. Behind me I heard the same man asking, "Where is God now?" And I heard a voice within me answer him, "Where is he? Here he is. He is hanging here on this gallows." At moments like these, I guess we would all stand in silent horror with Elie Wiesel, doubting God's love, or even just his existence. And yet, as we do so, we realize that this scene of such evil that indicts our belief in God also graphically depicts the very crux of our faith.
Right, the cross.
Exactly. I mean, it's understandable that many people ask, where is God in the face of terrible tragedies like this? It must have been, I think, the disciples' question on Holy Saturday, the day after Jesus died. Where is God? Especially with the words of Jesus still ringing in their ears, my God, why have you forsaken me?"
Now, some people watching this may well be struggling with faith itself because of some tragedy in their life, and others may be enduring a season of divine silence, feeling like their prayers are bouncing off the ceiling.
Yeah, I can relate to that, actually, because I've actually never found faith particularly easy. I think I'm a doubting Thomas, probably a bit too quick to ask, "Where are you, God?" And my wife, Sammy, on the other hand, she's the opposite. She didn't have the benefit of growing up in a Christian home like me. And yet her faith, it just never seems to waver. It's rock solid.
Wow, I'm really surprised to hear that you struggle with doubt.
Oh, no, definitely. At one time, I remember I was sitting by Sammy's hospital bedside, just absolutely desperate, as low as you can be. Sammy had had a particularly serious set of seizures the night before. And with appalling bedside manner, I turned to Sammy and said, "Do you ever just wonder if maybe God doesn't exist?" And she responded to me, "Pete, getting rid of God right now won't solve any of our problems." Wasn't that a great reply?
Wow, your wife is awesome.
She said, "Without God, I wouldn't have hope for this life or the next. I'd be nothing more than a highly evolved animal needing to be flushed out of the gene pool because my body's now broken," right? So I think I will stick with trying to trust because it's way better than the alternative.
What a woman.
One of the things that's actually really helped me as I've processed some of my darker days is this thing. It's, do you know what this is?
Well, for anyone that's seen me on my children's TV show, I know that I play a pirate. So I'm going to say it's something to do with navigating at sea.
That's amazing. You're exactly right. Every pirate worth his or her salt needs a sextant. For many centuries before satellite mapping, sextants enabled sailors to navigate by the light of the stars. So this really was an essential piece of kit.
Do you actually know how to use it?
Haven't a clue. I use GPS. I'm not stupid. but do you know how to use it?
No, I've got a crew to do that for me.
Oh, okay. It's like that. Look, the point is this. We now know that stars can be up to 10,000 light years away, which means, obviously, if a star dies, it could take us 10,000 years to notice that it had died. So it's perfectly possible for a sailor with a sextant to navigate by heavenly lights that may have died.
Okay, I'm with you.
It's like Elie Wiesel's story, Night. It's like Auschwitz. It's like the first followers of Jesus on Holy Saturday. If you've ever feared that God has died, remember, it's still possible to navigate by the light of dead stars. You can still trust the light you once knew, the things you once held true, and they will carry you through the darkest night to the dawn. There's someone else who came through concentration camps and survived with their faith intact. That was Corrie ten Boom. And she famously said, when you find yourself in a long, dark tunnel, that's not the time to get off the train.
Pete, can you just maybe give me some pointers on what that means then practically?
Yeah, I think it means, first of all, having faith in the faith of others, even when you don't have faith in yourself, right? So you lean into your Christian friends and don't isolate yourself from them. And secondly, I think it means a daily choice to believe your beliefs and doubt your doubts, even though your feelings are telling you to do the exact opposite, right? If you're constantly saying that star might not be there anymore, you're just going to get shipwrecked. Like, trust that it is still there, okay? And I think it also just means doing the things that you once did, like going to church, reading the Bible, just the basics of faith. Because those things, they may feel like just like you're going through the motions, okay, at times like that. But we always use that phrase, going through the motions, negatively. And I actually think there's something vitally important about spiritual muscle memory in those kind of seasons.
Isn't that a bit like the dark night of the soul?
Yeah, that term, as you probably know, was popularized by that 16th century mystic, St. John of the Cross. And he says that many people, and actually in the process of maturing spiritually, go through seasons when heaven is silent and God seems to have abandoned them. And although this may sound like a standard kind of crisis of faith, John's really clear that it's actually the exact reverse. It's a profound process of growing and going deeper in your faith.
Well, today's guest certainly knows a thing or two about being trapped in the darkness. So far in this series, we focused a lot on people whose experience of unanswered prayer lie in the realm of healing. But today we're looking at a different kind of suffering and a different kind of prayer.
The bus stop, taxi stop, just it's around 8 o'clock. The whole area is just quiet, so only you can hear my voice. So there are 600, 700 around people they gather. So when I start telling about the gospel, people they start crying. Even Muslims continue. Nobody throw stone, just keep silent crying. But the government, they arrest me at the time. My name is Helen Brhane. I'm from Eritrea, Asmara. So in 2002, the government recognized only 4 religious groups. 4 religious allowed, Catholic, Orthodox, Lutheran, Evangelical, and Sunni Islam. So I start preaching the gospel as I do on the street. So they arrest me, but finally, because the church was shut down, so I decided to record one CD. Yeah, I decided to record CD, so they are not happy. When the church shut down, how she recorded a CD? So they found me in real underground where I'm teaching young people. I have been teaching them around 1 month. One day they found out. So they tortured me very badly. So they took me to 6th division, it's a prison. So I say, oh, that's good. I can preach here because the church is closed. So in the morning, I start telling them about Jesus, and everybody is quiet and listening. It's amazing. They found out I'm singing in the evening. So they come and they torture me, and they decide to send me to military prison. So when I pray one day for one very ill man, so they come and they decide she's continuing what she's doing. So they decide to send me to, they call it Maisorwa, which means container. So this is kind of purpose to silence me. So we are asking, so what is next? They don't care. They close the door. They left. So around 1 o'clock, 1 p.m., the temperature is extreme, hot. So you can't light the container. So all of us in the middle. So it's kind of suffocation. People, they feel kind of dizzy. So there are three different age, like teenagers, middle age, also elderly women. So the elderly women, they are kind of, maybe we will die. Also the teenagers, they start collapse on the floor. So I'm in the middle. So they say, Helen, what can we do? So for me, it's new. I don't know if we survive or we die, because, so I say, please God, help me. So in these difficult times, God have answer. If you ask him and if you start to hear what he's saying. Most of the time we speak, but we don't hear what he's saying. Now the only thing we can do, we sing. I told them, huh? Sing? What can we sing? We need to sing Jesus Christ, he sacrificed himself on the cross just for love. So I think that is enough to worship him. So to hear song for the gods, it's kind of shock. Something is new. So I start singing. I say, thank you for this toilet. Thank you for everything by my language. It goes like this. ተመስገን በሁሉ ተመስገን በሁሉ ተመስገን በሁሉ ተመስገን ተመስገን በሁሉ ተመስገን ብዋዒ ተመስገን ብዛሕሊ ተመስገን ብዋዒ ተመስገን ተመስገን ብዛሕሊ, which means thank you because it's hot. I say thank you for this hot. Also in the night cold, I say thank you for the cold, for the hot. So I mentioned all this bad things, what's happening, all dark. So all of them, they start follow me to sing with me. So we are singing. So when we sing more, it's loud more. So these guards, they are kind of, what is this? They shock and they open this container, they start torture us. If you ask me, the situation is, yeah, it's hell on the earth. But when I start teaching guards, they are very angry. So almost they try to kill me. But I don't know how I survived. But always I'm saying the reason I survived just to be testimony for others. I'm not panic because when things happen, it's kind of stretch your mind, so you start thinking bigger.
Was there any point in your faith where you just despaired and you doubted your faith?
Once they put me with mental ill woman, I stay with a mental ill woman for 10 months. I say, God, you say everything is for good, but she pulled my hair. I can't eat. She kicked my food. She shouted the whole night. They don't give her any medication. So I say, God, what is this? Asking God, so it's remind me about Abraham. He traveled from Philistine to Moriah to sacrifice his own son. So I say, okay, this guy didn't change the first day, the next day. What? So Christianity, it's not to give up in the middle. So from that moment, I don't care what she's doing crazy inside the container. I say, yeah, I need to stand like my forefathers.
Oh, Helen, thank you so much.
What an incredible woman.
Yeah.
She's locked in a shipping container in the desert, being threatened and tortured. But instead of asking, where are you, God? She's worshipping God.
Yeah, and her story reminds me a bit of your sextant. Helen held on to the light so defiantly in the darkness. She took the truths of God's word and used them to navigate through such terrible times. And I know this isn't anywhere near as serious as what Helen went through, but I had an awful case of adult acne during my time working on Children's BBC. And I often felt like I just couldn't face going in front of the camera. But there was this supernatural, obedient confidence that I had in God who helped me to honour my contract and inspire others who were suffering with skin conditions by me actually getting up and going into the studio under the lights in front of the camera, doing what he had called me to do. And I can assure you that it was only God who enabled me to do that.
Oh, Gemma, that must have taken real courage.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, it's obviously nothing compared to the courage that Helen had.
Do you know, I was really struck by the way Helen derived some of her courage, some of her strength from music. I think there's such an ancient tradition here of lamenting your loss and expressing your hope in song. It's very powerful.
Yeah, it is. And there are a lot of psalms that are like that, aren't they? The kind of ebb and flow between hope and despair.
Yeah, absolutely. I like how Richard Foster describes the Psalms of Lament. He says they give us permission to shake our fists at God one moment and then break into doxology the next.
Yeah, I like that. So like honest anger one moment and then worship the next.
And isn't that really just the paradox of normal life, right? We get hurt and hope together. Praise in spite of all the pain. Gemma, random question. What are you like at wiring a plug?
It's been a while. Why?
Well, as it happens, I've got one here. And in a minute, I'm going to need you to do this one. So a quick test for you. Which wire is which? What's the brown one?
Brown is the live wire.
Correct.
And then
Blue one?
the neutral.
Yes. And the green one?
Earth.
Very, very good indeed. Okay, we're all going to be safe in that case. So maybe you can just get on and have a go at wiring. There is a reason for this, at wiring this plug.
Okay, what's that then?
Well, in a bit, I want to play a record to end this episode. I wanted to show you how biblical lament works using that plug there, okay?
In what way?
As you know, the live wire is always marked positive, the neutral is marked negative, and the earth's there to keep us safe. So it's only if you combine those two poles together, right, the negative and the positive in the right way, that you're going to hear the song that I want to play in a moment. So in other words, the negative is really just as important as the positive. And it's only by holding together the hurt and the hope that power can flow through our pain. So we've talked a lot, haven't we, about Jesus crying out from the cross, "Why have you forsaken me?" and how God didn't answer him.
Yeah, I think you said that the heavens were silent.
Exactly. But I wasn't actually quite right when I said that. Because when Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" he was actually quoting from the start of one of the Psalms of Lament, Psalm 22. And then his very last words from the cross, "It is finished," echo its final line too, which is, "He has done it."
I didn't know that.
So what we've got here is Jesus very deliberately reciting, we can only assume the whole of Psalm 22, from beginning to end, in his final moments, finding strength to speak out the first bit, "Why have you forsaken me?" and the last bit, "It is finished." So he wasn't just kind of venting some bleak primal scream of despair that echoes down the millennia. He was meticulously articulating scripture in his agony. Somehow, even in this moment of utter desolation, the Bible was still giving language to both his hurt and his hope.
Now that just makes me want to look up Psalm 22 and find out exactly what Jesus was praying.
Exactly, it's fascinating, isn't it? So we're going to do it, but it's quite long. So maybe we should just do part of it, okay? You're going to notice how it pivots between despair and hope, positive and negative. How are you getting with that plug, first of all?
Done.
You haven't?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well done. Okay, well, I'm going to plug that in. We're going to get some music. If you've wired it right, that is.
Hopefully.
In just a moment. But first, why don't we just read this psalm together? Okay, this is Psalm 22, so if you don't mind looking that up.
Yeah.
And my suggestion is that I read the despair verses and then you do the nice, hopeful ones in between, because you're nicer than me. So.
Okay.
So we'll start with verse 1 and just listen for how uncannily it predicts Jesus' experience on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out to you by day, but you do not answer, by night, but I find no rest.
Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the one Israel praises. In you our ancestors put their trust. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried out and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame.
Do not be far from me, for trouble is near and there is no one to help. They pierce my hands and my feet. All my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment.
All the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord, and all the families of the nations will bow down before him, for dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. Posterity will serve him. Future generations will be told about the Lord. They will proclaim his righteousness, declaring to a people yet unborn, he has done it. Wow, there's such an uncanny prediction of exactly what Jesus was experiencing on the cross. And I'm wondering if that might have helped him to realise that God actually hadn't abandoned him after all.
Yeah, exactly. And did you notice how his desperate cry of why at the start turns into this triumphant, expectant cry of he's done it at the end? So it's the negative and positive poles coming together, isn't it?
So, Pete, I'm dying to know what the record player is doing here and why you got me to rewire that plug.
Well, one of the most powerful expressions of this kind of lament in modern history is the great American tradition of spirituals. So generations of slaves gave speech to both their suffering and their hope in some of the most powerful songs ever sung. Without spirituals, we wouldn't have gospel music and the blues, jazz, soul, or rock. That's how powerful lament can actually be. So I thought we should finish today with one of the greatest spirituals of all time. This is a song first sung on the slave plantations more than 100 years ago. Just listen out for the way it combines the positive and the negative, the hurt and the hope at the heart of true faith in Jesus.
We are traveling in the footsteps of those who've gone before, but we'll all be reunited on a new and sunlit shore. Oh, and the saints go marching in.
Well, this week, you can watch or listen to the teaching talk again by following the link in eNews or dvbc.net or on our Facebook page or actually on the prayercourse.org site itself. Secondly, read and discuss the study guide, also downloadable from those sites. And thirdly, ask yourself, where are you waiting for a breakthrough? Where are you waiting for a word from God or an answer to prayer? What unanswered questions are you carrying with you today? And if you've never articulated those, write them down for yourself. What did you find most helpful and inspiring or even challenging by what Pete Gregg or Gemma Hunt or Helen Brehane shared today? That's your homework. Well, as we go through times that can feel parched and dry, desert times, if you want, let us live with hope. The desert will come to an end. Hope and faith in a God who will and who does hold the future is so important. Keep offering your prayers, even in the desert. This is my prayer in the desert. When all that's within me feels dry, this is my prayer in my hunger and need. My God is the God who provides. God bless. See you next week.
This is my prayer in the desert.